You're listening to This Week in Property. Stay current, relevant and up to date in the world of property investment. Learn from the UK's leading property professionals and grow your property business.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Property. I'm your host Richard Swan, and I have just had the amazing pleasure of sitting down for the second time with the one and only Peter Sage. Now, the first time we had Peter on the show, we just had a nice chat, interview, conversation about a whole host of things. It was a tremendous podcast, went down really well with the listeners. You seemed to get a lot from it, which was fantastic. And at that time, Peter was in the process of bringing out his new book, The Inside Track. Now, in typical fashion, he completely smashed it. It became an instant Amazon bestseller on its launch. Loads of you got it and read it because you knew it was coming out. And what we did, we invited Peter back onto the show, but this time I handed over the reins of the questions to your good selves, the listeners. For a week, we ran a campaign asking you, okay, if you had this man sitting in front of you, what would you want to ask him? Was there anything in the book, for example, that popped up and you want to clarify it? Is there anything you want to dig in about all his expertise on business, personal development, how he views life, nutrition, morning routines, night routines, coping with things, facing challenges, you name it? And you did not disappoint, dear listener. We were flooded with questions. It took a bit of time to try and shortlist them into a stack of questions that we would be able to ask Peter in the time we had. And that's what we did. Just sat down with him, ran through those questions. I'm going to leave them as a mystery just now. But you guys and girls touched on a whole host of things, and that allowed Peter to just go for it, just off the cuff, using his instinct, using his expertise and his knowledge to flood you with answers, to provide some incredible value, some amazing insights. So, buckle up, listen in, and without any further ado, Mr. Peter Sage. Peter, hello sir, and welcome back to This Week in Property.
Always a pleasure, Richard, and really happy we got to reconnect.
Yes, this is fantastic. I can't believe the whirlwind you must have been through. There he is, the Amazon bestseller himself of The Inside Track. Absolutely brilliant stuff, and I've got my book here. There we are. I was showing my daughters this morning. This is who Dad's going to be working with today. They recognised your face actually from the time I was in the business school with you down in London. That's the tall guy. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I look shorter on a podcast.
Thank goodness. So why do we have him back in the podcast? Well, you would grab this man at any chance you could, let's be honest, but it's for a purpose. The first interview we did with this great man just went bananas. The listeners loved it. We are This Week in Property, yes, but the listeners, they're all about entrepreneurship, business, property, self-development, lifestyle, the full gamut of things that we try and cope with as our special human beings that we are. And it went down a storm. We spoke about the book. It was just about to kind of ramp up to the launch. Made sure every listener knew about that, and tons of them obviously jumped on board like everyone else, grabbed your book, and when we put out a message saying Peter's coming back on, this Amazon bestseller is now coming back on, throw us your questions. Forget Richard having a wee chat and a conversation, which he loves anyway, but what do you want to ask him? What came up for you maybe halfway through the book? What was the thing what did he mean by that? I would love to be able to ask him. Well, now you can, because he's coming back on, throws your questions. We got loads of questions, sat down with the team, and we sifted through a lot of them, tried to put together groups of them that were quite similar, and we chose some of them as the example of that, and we've got them here. So we are ready to roast you, my man. Are you ready to face this onslaught?
I was born ready, you know that. So yeah, bring it on. And again, I'm very happy to take anything that's spontaneous, out of left field. There's nothing off limits. Part of the entire aspect I think that people resonated with the book so well on is the fact that it was raw, it was authentic, it was real. And I want to keep that theme as we speak, because I think that's important, because I'm not here to promote anything. I'm here to add as much value as I can to people in a way that clarifies any of the distinctions, the lessons, or the understandings. Because you can communicate so much in a book, but ask me anything and you kind of get the drilled in.
So true. Fantastic. Good on you. Right, drum roll. Here we go. So we are off. We're starting in Scotland. We are off to the town of Falkirk, and this was Paul from Falkirk. So from the shock of going into prison as a non-criminal to the very end of the tale, being awarded the Costler Award for the work that he then actually carried out inside the system, how on earth does he look back? How on earth does Peter look back on that whole journey? Is it surreal? Did it really happen? Is it magical? What does he think looking back?
Great question. And I often do look back, and sometimes it is surreal because it seems so far removed from the life I have at the moment, which is a little less confined. And from when I went in, I knew, as I said at the book, chapter 1, letter 1, page 1, I'm going in as a secret agent of change. My entire mission at that point was set. It's like if you go on holiday and you think back onto one of the nice holidays you had. It's kind of surreal sometimes because you're back in rainy England or Scotland. And you remember the time on the beach. It was different. It was a different kind of world. So there's that kind of relationship to it, but there was purpose. And I said I was filming the prison scene of my movie. I was on location for 6 months, and that's kind of how I feel. Now I'm filming the next scene of my movie, wherever that takes me. And so, looking back, it's like, wow, did that really happen? And it was interesting reading back over the letters myself. Yeah. Bearing in mind, I wrote these in real time as it was happening, as you get the feel as you go through the book. So I'm like, wow, I remember what I was feeling when I wrote that. I remember where I was when I got that insight, that distinction, or delineating that suicide intervention, or working with the guys on that defusing the time bomb, or on the religious conversation, that kind of stuff. And I look back and thought, wow, that actually did happen. Because you think you probably couldn't even make up. No. I remember it was the last week when I was in Sudbury. I got a few days left to the sentence, and I remember actually walking around, allowing myself for the first time to really feel proud. And when I say proud, I don't mean pride as it calibrates on the level of consciousness, on the map of consciousness at 175 to 199. That is a different kind of pride. That is an ego-based look at me, peacock feathers kind of pride, which is self-serving. But pride, when it's used in the context of self-esteem, as in self-reward, can be very useful for being able to raise your level of consciousness out of not good enough, or any of those lower level emotions and vibrations. So I remember thinking, actually, it was when all the people were coming up to me, and I'd done several talks, and I'd seen all the changes in the people I was working with. I'm like, it's for me to judge and the big guy, but I actually think I've done pretty well, and it was that real sense of like, Pete, well done, because that could have gone one of many different ways.
So true. And you kept obviously referring to this is my lessoning class. I'm showing up for my lesson. Well, you get pretty good exam results, I would say, if you look back at it that way, because some of the people that were helped, the stories involved it was fascinating to follow the journey, to go along with those stories. All of a sudden, as you say, you're dealing with I remember the whole discussion around Islam, and those two guys were facing off each other, and it was heated and strong. And okay, how did you analyse it? How did you stand back from it? And then how did you swoop in and guide it along? It was just amazing, absolutely amazing. So you faced a few tough lessons along the way, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's part of the game. If you're an athlete, you're not going to lift the weights that you can already lift, because then there's no growth. And if you've got a personal trainer worth their salt, they're not going to ask you to do that. They're going to ask you to push yourself to the point where, let's say if you're not throwing up in 60 minutes, you want your money back. So it was an amazing experience. I'm I'm so grateful I got the chance to go through it. And, it's part of the river, part of the game. And I'd much rather have that kind of lesson than some of the other lessons many other people get, whether it's loss of a loved one, whether it's a, terminal illness diagnosis, whether it's, a brutal divorce or whatever it may be. I mean, we all have our adversities.
Yes.
For some people, the ultimate nightmare is going to prison. For some people, it'd be the ultimate, escape from all of the drama that they have outside of prison. Yeah. So we all get what we need, not what we want to choose.
Yes, correct. Fantastic. So, good question, Paul. That was a great start. So, staying in Scotland, it's the capital, it's Edinburgh, and this one is from Dan in Edinburgh. Throughout the book, I read Peter mentioning his business school, EMF, Master's Circle. Can you please ask him to explain what each of these are and how do they all relate and tie into each other and what he does, his services, his business? What do all these buzzwords mean, Peter? Explain it to the people.
Well, the first thing I'll mention is that, again, these letters were never meant to be published publicly. I wasn't writing to the public and I wasn't writing a book.
Yeah.
What I was writing to my existing students because they were the ones that were kind of following in. They were the ones that trusted me to provide a level of service that they were paying for at the time that then suddenly got pulled out of the way. And again, as I outlined in the first letter, I offered an invitation. Said, listen, you can't change what has happened. I didn't see this coming, but we can't put the milk back in the bottle once it's spilt. You can only figure out, what's the best way to deal with what's happened. So, I also see this as an incredible opportunity for you to come along with me so that I can teach you, those that have already demonstrated an interest in my work. Am I real? Is this going to show up here? And I don't know what's happening. There's no second takes. There's no cameras. There's no, let's see what happens. And I don't know what's going to happen, but let's roll the dice and come on the journey because, that's the most value I can add to you in this current environment that I can think of. So, my business school, which you've been to, is a 3-day event where I kind of sucker punch people into thinking they're coming to make money, and I end up hopefully opening their hearts in a way that transforms a lot of their limitations internally, which then frees them up to give more of who they are as a gift to the world, which ironically then usually translates into more prosperity coming back because, as we know, money is only a reflection of the value that you add. So if there's less of you to add because you're so scared because you haven't got money, then how can you make money if there's not more of you showing up? So the business school is really about getting people that are in pain through financial lack and realizing that they don't need financial abundance in order to become the gift of who they are. So that frees them up to go out and give more of who they are, which then translates into financial abundance. It's that. So that's my 3-day school. I enjoy doing it. It's an incredible experience. I'm only going to do one more. It's going to be the 2019 Sage Business School. It'll be the last business school that I do. We haven't set a date yet. It's going to be one that you definitely are not going to want to miss because I'm going to put everything into that for the last one. After that, I'm going to be moving more into my passion around raising consciousness than teaching business.
Right.
Yeah. And writing books and following on my current journey. So that's the business school. Then there is the Elite Mentorship Forum, which is my main students I was writing to. And that is a 6-month group coaching program, which is the highest level of personal transformation course that I have. And it's a 6-month, we release it every 6 to 8 months, but it's a 6-month journey, maximum 100 people at a time. And it is probably my most enjoyable program because of the transformation I see people go through. It is literally a school where you start and when you finish, you are not who you are when you started. It's impossible. You got a glimpse of that in 3 days at the business school. Yeah. But so the EMF, it's online, and there's online modules, and then I come in for the live calls, in between the modules to answer all the questions, all that kind of stuff. And it's just a great peer group. It's a great mentorship program. I love it. So we're currently on Elite Mentorship Forum 5. I was riding EMF 4.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and we just had the annual festival. It was at my home. It was on my birthday weekend. We had people from EMF 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 flying from over the world. We had an incredible day at my home with a barbecue and EMF quiz and peak general knowledge stuff. And it was a lot of fun.
Oh, my goodness. Wait a minute. Tell me the truth. Did Thea, during that, being swamped by people from all over the world, did she have a wee thought of, I wish she was actually back at Pentonville? Come on.
I don't think she needs a million people invading the house to occasionally think that, to be fair. You know? It's funny because I'm leaving. I'm in Tenerife right now, and I'm leaving in 2 days for Bali to go teach my relationship course to the Master Circle, which brings me on to the next part of the question, which is the Masters. Now, the MC or the Master Circle is where I get to teach my highest level content, and this is where we go into high levels of understanding quantum alignment. I give a hint into that on the end of chapter 4. Where I talk about active meditation. Yes. I give a little bit of a deep down. I also touch on a little bit around the metaphysics of what I go into a lot more detail in on chapter 2, where I talk about egregores. Yes. And the energetic understanding around that. I teach 2 deep dive modules on egregores as part of the Master Circle Foundation course. So yeah, it's a high-end program. I don't know at this stage if I'm going to continue it into 2019. So essentially it's an annual program where we get a video call every single week with all of the members, and there's the foundation course to it. There's a lot of other content, but every 3 months, every quarter, we go away and have these incredible adventures together, and with a theme. This one's in Bali and it's relationships. The previous one a few months ago was in Croatia, and it was all understanding health and vitality. And so first one this beginning of the year was in Iceland, and that was in understanding mission, purpose, and legacy. And then the last one we're going to be doing, potentially the last event ever on the MC, is going to be December this year. That's going to be focused on business and profits. Now, one of the key distinctions or one of the key attributes of an MC trip is nobody knows what's going to happen apart from me. The tax is hidden. You just know when you're going to arrive. All of the costs and expenses are covered from the moment you step off the plane to the moment you get back on the plane as part of the membership. But what happens after that is usually a mixture of like half a day classroom or learning or practical learning experiences, half a day wow. That's all we want to call it, wow. And so I'll give you a little hint around Africa. Let's just say that we're going to be starting in one country, and by the time we finish, it's going to be a 10-day trip in December. We'll have gone to several countries, and part of that, let's just say on people's bucket lists, is usually something like, I don't know, let's pick a random draw of trekking gorillas in Uganda, something like that, and other fun stuff that may show up. So yeah, I think it's common knowledge we're going to be doing some gorilla trekking on the next trip, but all the other stuff nobody's aware of, although I promise you it'll be just as good and amazing.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds brilliant. Oh, and the news about the business school. Oh, people better jump on that before it ends. My goodness, listeners, if you keep your eyes on petersage.com, keep up to date with that, because if that's going to be the last one next year, you do not want to miss out on that one. That would be a life's regret. Okay, Jan, down in Surrey. Now, funnily enough, you're talking about Croatia and health and stuff, because this is what this one ties into. Peter mentioned some strange concoction of coconut milk, bananas and oats, and using a kettle in his small cell. Can you ask him what on earth was he making with this stuff, and what is Peter's regular diet nutrition plan? Because that's the thing, Peter. I mean, we want to dig into that secret sauce that you were doing there, but these days, I mean, we're swamped. You're vegan, you're paleo, you're vegetarian, you're bulletproof, you're intermittent fasting, you're high carb, low carb, high. Where on earth do you stand in that world? When you look at things with all the knowledge you've got, contacts you've got, scientists, the things you've went through.
Well, let's come back to the Pentonville side for a second, because I mentioned this in volume 3 when I talk about the food. And again, some organizing principles, one of the organizing principles to the question, is this diet good? Is that diet good? Is this good for me? Is that good for me? Compared to what? Right? You can answer the same question with those three, any question with those same 3 words. Compared to what? Is drinking coffee good for me? Well, compared to drinking a McDonald's milkshake, yes, coffee's better. Compared to drinking a live, carrot, apple, and ginger, then no. I would put the coffee down. Is drinking a live carrot, apple, and ginger good? Absolutely. Or compared to a high alkaline mixture of pure chlorella and different levels of electrolytes, take the chlorella.
Right.
Compared to what? Should I drink a McDonald's milkshake? Well, compared to drinking petrol, then I drink the milkshake. Compared to what? Right. So in prison, the food that we are provided is not provided by a team of nutritionalists that have our well-being, health, and vitality as their highest value. Let's just say that. It's selected and purchased based upon a budget, which is essentially reduced to a line item, which is essentially reduced to the criteria of how much can we get that does the job for the cheapest we can. Yeah. That isn't usually conducive to the most macroscopic or microscopic level of nutrient value. So basically, how can we keep them alive and full, right? In the cheapest, crappiest possible way. So I did not appreciate or get on with prison food, because I come from a high level of health. But we did have some control over it, and that was we were able to order each week on the canteen sheets that you hand in, and then it gets delivered on a Friday. Yeah. So I would order 10 1.5 litre bottles of water, because I wouldn't drink the water out of the taps there if you paid me. I'd ordered a load of fruit, bananas, pears, apples, etc. Now, of course, there's no fridge in your cell, and if it's warm, it spoils quickly. But the other aspect of this is that the shopkeepers that have the contract for supplying the prison don't come from a high level of consciousness. They come from the profit model. They probably got the actual contract based upon the lowest amount of profit that they would take. So they're making very little. So what happens to the fruit that you can't sell? Right? You give it to the prisoners because they can't complain. Right? I can't say, just let me out for 20 minutes. I've got to nip down to the shop to get my money back. I'm going to swap this banana because it's not going to happen. So I have to order double fruit to get at least half of that fruit, being any kind of decent consumptional level. Coconut milk was available, and that's great. Love my coconut milk. So that was a way of getting some good, fat into the body. Yeah. And oats at the time was a great substitute. And of course, you've got no cooking facilities, but you do have a kettle. And so everybody cooks in the kettle. So you'd always have two kettles. You'd have one for boiling water, because I'd also have peppermint and chamomile tea bags. Mm-hmm. And the other kettle you'd use for cooking, because once you start cooking, you can't really boil water and not have the flavor of whatever you've cooked at some point. Right? So I'd have my kettle, and getting an extra kettle is not easy. There's all sorts of underground shenanigans that goes on as the black market economy in prison that you've got to shape up with. But I managed to get an extra kettle, and through a lot of the work I was doing for helping people, not in return for certain favors you wouldn't want me to do. Just to make it clear. But I'd put the water in out of the bottle. I'd put some coconut milk. I'd put in the oats. I put in peanut butter, and I'd heat up the coconut milk, and then I'd mix it all in the bowl. Right. Then I'd chop up a banana and put it in, and that was kind of my breakfast. It was a really good start to the day, rather than the acidic sugar, commercial produced crap that they'd expect you to do. And you get a sandwich at 11 o'clock delivered to the cell, which is just poor. Sometimes you'd be scraping the green mold off the bread, that kind of stuff. And then the one evening meal that you'd go down to, which again is slop with extra slop. Well, actually, no, you don't get extra slop; you just get slop. Yeah, just get slop. So, compared to what I feed my dogs are on a BARF, raw food, high level superfood, macronutrient diet. That is, they'll live to 25 years old on that diet. I'd eat my dog food rather than the stuff I had in prison. Compared to starving to death. I'm very happy to have what they serve me, So, that's what I was doing. But my normal diet outside of that, again, you can sum up the confusion around, do I go, am I paleo, am I keto, am I breatharian, am I, fruitarian, am I, whatever, McDonald's-arian, whatever you want to do, choice you want. Some key fundamental guiding principles, because I can't tell you, all right, because I'm not you. So I can offer some key fundamental guiding principles. One of them I've already given. Compared to what? Yeah. Right? The second one is listen to your body. Your body is the ultimate feedback machine, right? Now, I call life a kitchen. Yeah, if I'm in the kitchen of life, and life has provided me everything that I need in order to not starve to death. Now, we're talking economically here as well as emotional fulfillment, everything, right? So just stay on the macro model for a second. Mm-hmm. So if we use life as a kitchen as a metaphor, you've been given pots, pans, a cooker, ingredients, spices, everything. A lot of people sit there and complain that they're hungry. And some people get off their backside and go and work for a living, and they cook some food. It doesn't taste very nice. Well, life isn't going to cook it for you. You will, if you want to learn, find people that will help teach you how to cook. Mm-hmm. There's mentors out there. But what I love about the kitchen metaphor is that it's complete and it's self-policing, and the feedback is pretty effective. In other words, if I oversalt the food and my food tastes salty, I can deal with that. That's good feedback. Yep. If I was going to oversalt the food and my food tasted sweet, I'd be confused as hell because I wouldn't know how to cook.
Yep.
Right? So if you take that on a local level, your body is the environment, it's the kitchen. Yep. If you eat certain things, your body will give you feedback. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you imagine that you've never been taught that, and you want to stay in shape, but you were never taught that diet and staying in shape were related. Right? And bearing in mind, for anyone that's out there that's training, one of my axioms that I teach, you get fit and strong in the gym, you build your body in the kitchen. Yep. You see a lot of people trying to get in the gym to lose weight. You don't lose weight in the gym, you lose weight in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Right? You get fit and strong in the gym. Right? So if you have the mindset of saying, oh, well, I'm going to try this particular food, right? And I start putting on weight, but you didn't know there was a link. It's like, I don't know where all this weight's coming from. I'm just ordered 3 pizzas, but I just, I have hamburgers for breakfast. And why am I getting this big bulge around the middle? I mean, if you didn't know that, you'd be screwed, right?
Yeah.
But your body is giving you feedback. So listen to it. Some people love chamomile tea. One of my friends is highly allergic to it. It brings him up in a red rash, and he didn't even know that for years.
Wow.
Your body is your individual Geiger counter for understanding what gets on for you. If you get on with paleo, right, and it works for you, go with paleo. Mm-hmm. But what you can't do is then impose your belief system on somebody else that says, oh, no, I'm going keto. Yeah. And keto is better. That's about as futile as saying, snow is better than sunshine, because you own a ski resort and they own a beach resort. So, listen to what it is. There's some basic fundamental guiding principles. Compared to what? Listen to your body, and the 3 areas that I chunk health into, because as you say, it's a commercial minefield with so many hidden agendas. Yeah. One of my favorite books in the 1970s by Darrell Huff, How to Lie with Statistics. It's, you can make any study, show any, results that you want based upon your agenda for what that study is. Case closed. And how much you're paying your PR agent to put it into the national press so that the gullible public will then drink it up. Yeah. So if you have a situation where you compared to what, listen to your body, then how do you chunk health to make it simple? 3 things, right? Everything about health you can, I'm talking about nutrition here, about food. Right, when it comes to physical health on exercise program stuff, that's a separate conversation. Sure. But for food, you want to maintain a healthy environment. Very simple. 3 things, and everything else chunks under one of these 3 categories. 1, stop putting the wrong things in. Pretty simple. Number 2, you can probably guess what it is. Start putting the right things in. Ta-da! And then number 3, get what's in there that shouldn't be in there out. Everything else you can, will fall under one of them 3 categories when it comes to health, when it comes to nutrition. So, and the categories of those are personal to you. Yes. And it's, your basic common sense stuff. Your body's 70% water. You need to have a high, water-based content diet. Mm-hmm. I'm a big juice fan. So going back to my actual routine, I'll juice pretty much, first thing in the morning. I'll get out of bed, I'll drink a pint of water and lemon. I'll have a ginger shot. There's a video on my YouTube channel show you how I make them. I freeze my ginger shots and I just put them into silicone ice cube trays. I pop one out into a shot glass before I go to bed. I pop it at the side of the bed when I wake up in the morning before my feet hit the ground. Ooh, morning espresso, as Jason Vale calls it. And so, and I'd say, what's that? 70% of my diet's raw because I'll have juice or a protein shake in the afternoon. One thing that I find that's very easy, it takes 5 minutes a day to make, and it sets you up for a really good grounding from my side. Again, your body may say no, in which case, listen to your body. Sure. Hemp milk. Yeah, I make fresh hemp milk every day. Mm-hmm. And unless I'm traveling, and then I haven't bought hemp seeds with me, but I'll take organic hemp seeds, take a big scoop, put them into a NutriBullet, third full of water, blast it into a milk, pass it through a mesh nut milk bag, squeeze it into a jug, fill it up with 2 liters of, pass through 2 liters of filtered water. You've got 2 liters of fresh hemp milk. It forms the basis for my protein shakes. I'll go to the fridge and drink it. You've got every amino acid, every one of, hemp is nature's superfood. Yeah, it's one of the most complete foods on the planet that nature's provided. So,
an incredible plant as well. They used to build cars out of it and everything. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I would take a house built out of hempcrete and concrete. Yeah. It's just one of the most versatile substances on the planet, which is hence why the prohibition came in.
Yes.
The level it did.
A whole other story of politics and stuff, yes, indeed.
Yeah, let's move on to the questions.
That was brilliant. Excellent. Loads of great insights there. And we've cracked the master plan of how to build an army of McDonald Aryans. All we need is a nice advert saying, this milkshake is better than petrol. That's what I picked up on. Brilliant. Okay, we have Scott up next from Kings Lynn. Peter made a joke about sleeping in, and he's put that in quotes deliberately, sleeping in until 7 a.m. while he's used to 5 a.m. rises. Can you please ask him to give some of his secrets away about his nighttime routine and his morning routine? If he's up at 5 a.m., what time does he normally aim to be in bed sleeping? And how does he actually value and think about sleep in that whole understanding around health and nutrition and energy and so on? There we go. Some great wee questions that Scott's pulling on there.
Yeah, no, that is a good question and a very topical subject because most entrepreneurs are conditioned to try to hack sleep. Yeah, and or burn the candle at both ends, or sleep when I'm dead, and all the other stuff. Yeah, and I had a very similar attitude in my 20s. I was working 130 to 133 hours a week. I was falling asleep at traffic lights. I was yawning for a living. But I was push. It was total by me. I've come to understand a lot more about sleep. And I have a very good friend who I'm going to be in Bali with, who is also on the Master Circle. And his name is Dr. Kirk Parsley. Probably goes well with Sage. But he's a former US Navy SEAL and then became the physician for the West Coast SEALs and is now recognized as America's #1 sleep expert. And I've spent a fair bit of time listening to Kirk and hanging out with Kirk, and he's just an awesome dude. But his knowledge of sleep really enlightened me around the fact versus the fiction. Mm-hmm. It's the only area in the entire medical sphere of traditional medicine that people agree on. Right? The facts are incontroversial. Right? And that is that sleep deprivation is the biggest cause of stress, malfunction, inflammation, than almost anything else, other than direct allergies to stuff that you consistently take. But sleep deprivation is so much of an addiction, people don't know it. And if you're sleep deprived for 2 days, and when I say sleep deprived, if you've got like 20% less sleep than what you need 2 days in a row, your performance and cognitive function is the equivalent to someone who's over the legal limit for driving on alcohol. Yeah, and there's far more people that are driving around more drunk on sleep deprivation than alcohol consistently. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And so, Kirk was dialing me on some of the ways you can mitigate that. I mean, Tim Ferriss talks about polyphase sleeping in the 4-hour body. Yeah. I've done polyphase sleeping, and Kirk was saying, listen, it's not as if it mitigates the sleep, you're just putting it at different times. Yeah. Right? Which is great because it can also reset you in the afternoon, etc. So I've done polyphasing, but here's a distinction that I would bring to the table and invite people to look at that Kirk doesn't really talk about because nobody talks about. I honestly believe that the higher your level of consciousness, the lower sleep you need, or the less sleep you need. which to me makes more sense, because if you're not dealing with as much stress, you don't need as much repair. Because you only grow, you only recover, you only repair when you're asleep. All of the brain gets flushed at night. Yeah, there's so many things that happen, that there's chemicals that are produced at night that would be toxic to you in the day that are critical to you at night.
Right.
Yeah. And it's, there's different aspects of sleep where you're integrating dreams and you're processing learning and creativity. And there's other stuff where you're just doing physical repair in different levels of brain waves, whether it's, low delta, mid theta, etc. But for me personally, I try to keep my vibration high. I set myself up to win. So my nighttime routine is as important as my morning routine, which means, I'm a great believer that the mood you go to sleep in is the mood you get up in. Yeah. So give yourself an energy instruction at night. Are you going to bed and letting go and being grateful for the fact that you've got a bed to sleep in? Yeah. That you're getting excited about, you're going to be given a new day tomorrow. And I use that word, specifically, given a day. Yeah. Because that only engenders gratitude. Are you going to be in a position where you go to bed and you just hand over any of the stuff that you can't deal with consciously to a higher level of intelligence that it becomes your overnight, chief crisis management officer that always takes care of stuff? Or do you say, no, I'm going to hold that for the next 2 hours where my mind can't shut off and I'm trying to process, I'm running around, and then I'm more stressed because I've got less sleep. Yeah. Or are you going to give yourself the energy instructions, like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I'm going to be a zombie in the morning, and go to sleep with that attitude, and then see how you wake up and walk around like, Night of the Living Dead. So set yourself up to win. Stop watching blue light, at least an hour or two before bed. You can turn it off. If you look at my iPhone, it's a weird color, right? And that's because there's no blue light that comes out of it. It's set on permanent. Right? So, from my side, set yourself up to win at night. And for me personally, 6 hours is more than adequate. My body will reject more than 6 hours sleep on a traditional level of process, which means that, if I had less than 6 hours the night before, there's going to be a sleep debt.
Right.
If, I've been drinking alcohol, which lowers your frequency, there's going to be a sleep debt. It's going to take more time for the body to repair. If I've been angry that day and whatever, and stuff like that, and I go to bed and I'm all tense, then guess what? You're going to need more time to let the body to process that. So it's fairly simple. It's not rocket science. But if you're trying to skip sleep because you're pushing forward with will, you're not conditioning yourself to less sleep, which is what I thought I used to do. You're simply pushing it further away. Right. Yeah. And you will at some point crash. And so sleep it's the quality, not the quantity. 6 hours to me of good sleep. I know people that sleep for 8 hours and wake up tired. Why? They've not really been asleep. They've been unconsciously stressed. They may have had their eyes shut and they may not be remember stuff, but even their dreams are pretty stressful. And their body's in a state of high heart rate and what have you, even while you sleep. So for me, that's getting enough sleep. For me, 6 hours I'm more than adequate. I can bounce out of bed fully charged. And I'm a battery. Some people are night owls. I'm not. I'm a battery. I wake up fully charged and I wind down at night. I'm not creative at night. So. And
again, that goes back to us being our own Geiger counter, isn't it? Who am I? Right, okay. And feel it, listen to it, observe it.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
So, and then the morning routine, because I'm a morning guy, I'm a big believer in it sets up the day. If you're not getting up a couple of hours before the craziness and the Zoom, right, and everything, because then you're on the motorway of life, and there's cars coming at you, and there's also you're dealing with stuff. But if you're the only car on the road for an hour or two, and you can get the stuff done that you want to get done, on the motorway of life. I get up, I meditate, I journal, I read, I do my heart math, and it's a great way to start the day. I then, by 7 o'clock, I'm out of my meditation room. I go take the dogs for a 5-mile bike ride. They do a lot more than that because they chase squirrels, right? And they love it. Right? They then go sleep in the car because they're cream crackered, and I go to the gym. I have my workout. I come back, I'm home for 9 o'clock, and I've got my juice, have a shower, I'm ready to go for about 9:30. My body's done, my mind's done, my spirit's done. And I've got, if everything else went to hell in a handbasket, I've got a great start of the day.
Yeah.
Again, it's like come back to health. If you have all of the nutrition you require in the morning through a healthy smoothie, juice, natural, whatever fortified level of stuff, and you're putting all the stuff in the body, it's your health insurance. If you then go and have freaking Domino's and Haagen-Dazs for lunch, it's not as good, but at least you've got your health insurance. At least you've got your body, what the body needs. If you're not putting in that and then you're giving it valueless, toxic food, you get the idea. So at least get your health insurance, your mental, spiritual health insurance, as well as your physical health insurance done in the morning, and then whatever transpires in the day, you're ready for it.
Yeah. Fantastic. You just reminded me as well, there is a little red object at the very back of this Scottish garden, which is a rebounder purchased after the business school. And my goodness, adding that into my morning routine has just been transformational. Absolutely amazing. The whole, you explained that, the lymphatic system and so on. It's just, it's incredible. What a great way to win the morning, win the day, as you say.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, let's move on. Who was that? That was Scott. So I'll just move his question up a wee bit. Scott, thank you. Mark is next up from Kettering. There seems to have been so many insights and lessons learned throughout Peter's experience with Pentonville. If he was pinned down to only being able to tell the one biggest insight from it all, so if you were painted into that corner, what would it be?
Well, whenever I'm painted into a corner, I just paint a door, but that's
you're a cheat.
And a shift of metaphor at that level can be that easy to unfree somebody from a blocked mind, by the way. Again, as he quite rightly said, and great question, thank you for that. And again, Kettering, just down the road from me in Leicester.
Oh, of course. Yeah, Leicester, yep.
Yeah. And I would say that if I was to put or chunk up to one overarching lesson that would sort of encompass as much of this as possible, it comes down again to, it's never what happens to you that makes the difference. It's what you do with what happens that makes the difference.
Yeah.
There is almost 95% of our life is outside of our control. You can't control the people that you're with, the weather that is happening, the customers that are buying from you, your spouse, any of that. If you're running around with a model of the world that seeks to control that, I've got news for you. You need more than 6 hours sleep. So, but it's being able to flow with the river and being able to have that level of, I know this is happening for a bigger reason. Remember, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. I put my actual poster I put in the cell in the book at the back. And now I see it. Now it's hard to see that joining the dots forward. But now looking back, the inside track's helping so many people right now. I'm getting so much feedback. I had one of Tony's master trainers, Tony Robbins' master trainers yesterday, send me this incredible message about it's the most impactful, inspiring book he's ever read in the last 10 years.
Whoa.
And I'm very humbled by that. But that wouldn't have happened. I've been trying to write a book for 4 freaking years. I've been too busy. Life had to send me away to be able to make it real.
Come, Peter, I'll show you how to do it.
But yes, it's never what happens that makes the difference. It's what you do with what happens that makes the difference. And whether that's going through a tragic accident, whether it's going through, I had a friend of mine yesterday, a close friend whose father just passed away, and he sent me a message saying, my father just passed away this morning. I can't breathe. Okay? And I sent him a message saying, similar to the guy in chapter 7, it's every parent's wish their children outlive them.
Yeah.
And I said, we can't avoid that happening even on our own timeline. Right? That's an inevitable part of life, but I'm almost certain that your father would have not chosen to leave at some point, at a spiritual level, had he not been proud enough of you to be able to have the strength to fly the nest and live your own life and be the father that you are to your kids. But I also said it's also very natural to grieve. Grieving at that level is a healthy process of expressing different levels of emotion. Here's the distinction. If you are grieving from a higher level of consciousness, where you are able to allow yourself to visit low levels of consciousness, that's okay because it has a purpose. There are certain times where being angry is appropriate. There are certain times where grieving is appropriate. Certain times where you feel apathetic, that's okay. If the body's telling you to chill out, for example. But if you're stuck there, and then grieving becomes your story or your excuse for being able to be in a victim mode, or how you talk to yourself and becomes an inability to raise back up because you're getting whatever needs met at that level, then you've got a different game. But thinking, I'm high level of conscious, I should just see the love in this and love my father. No, you're going to miss the guy. It's your father. Right? You transition to a very different part of your life right now where, and I've lived through it. I've lived through the death of both my parents. And it was right to grieve. I wanted to grieve, but I wasn't sad from the place of, oh my God, my life's over. Oh my God, why me? Why now? No, there was none of that going on. But to sit authentically in that level of grief and mourn and pass, go to the Bible. What's the name? I never pronounce it right. Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiasticus.
There you go. There's a time for grief. There's a time for joy. There's a time to reap. There's a time to sow. There's a time for happiness. There's a time to dance. There's a time to sit down. That is life. That's the game we're here to play. Remember what I said in chapter 1 about the movie, right? What makes a good movie? Everything. Drama, comedy, tragedy, romance, upset. That's the movie you want to pay to go watch. Where you walk out of the cinema at the end and think, wow, what a movie. Not like, let's live in this narrow little bandwidth of emotion, and that's such a boring freaking movie nobody will watch. So you watch it twice. I want to live a life that I'd want to live again. And that isn't about trying to be all the high points. If you were born on the top of a mountain, how would you know to appreciate what the valleys are like? And so, for me, the biggest lesson was understanding that it's not about being happy all the time. That's not the game we're in. But it's about understanding that it doesn't matter what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens. You can't control the death of your father. You can control how authentic you want to stay in a place of grief that feels right before coming back and then being stronger and empowered as the man you are now, without living in the shadow of your father, to move and create your own life, to be the example so that your kids can hopefully one day do the same.
Yes. Fantastic. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it or how you respond to it. It's funny, just share a wee personal story about that. You were sharing one yourself there. We had something very similar recently. My 3 daughters managed to get a real life example of it because one of the young teenage girls in our wider family 2 years ago was diagnosed with leukemia. And loads of us went and climbed a nearby mountain, made this hilarious, funny comedy video, pulled in a few celebrities, blah, blah, blah. Did it to perk her up, to help her, to motivate her. We also raised a lot of money for charity. But here's the great thing. How she dealt with that, I mean, you can't even imagine it coming into your head. You're at high school and somebody tells you, oh, you've got leukemia, by the way. How she dealt with that and responded to that meant that 2 years later, just the other weekend there, she climbed the mountain with us. Totally clear, full remission. Remarkable, absolutely remarkable. So there we are. Great stuff. Right, let's push on. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I think it's Fabrice. It's Febrice. So if I've got it wrong, please forgive me. Fabrice from Temple Meads in Bristol. There are a number of mentors mentioned in Peter's life through the book. Who does he believe has had the biggest impact on him? Yes, you've been very blessed in that area, Mr. Sage.
Well, when the student's ready, hopefully the teacher appears, and sometimes he had to give you the lesson that you weren't ready for. But for me, I would have to say that the biggest impact I consistently say is George Zalicki. Now, I was very blessed to have spent a week with George and Eloise at their home a couple of months ago in Knoxville. He's incredible, and it was funny because I saw George when he was on stage, and I was at the front row of a seminar that I couldn't really afford. I was 18, and he had such a big impact on me. I tell the story on my YouTube channel. It's called My Most Impactful Mentor. It's a beautiful story. It's a tribute to George, and it's worth anybody going to watch that for 15 minutes of your time today. Okay. But what was full circle, and another big magic moment, was George asked me if I'd do a private talk for his guests and his friends at his home. And he's got a beautiful mansion in Knoxville, and he had this private cinema room, and invited all of his close high-level friends. And hearing George introduce me to get up and give a talk, that was just like, from an 18-year-old kid was just amazing. But he's 80 this year. Another one of my mentors who I emailed and had an exchange with yesterday just gave me a beautiful testimonial, actually, for some speaking gigs I'm doing for an organization he founded called EO, or the Entrepreneurs Organization. And that's Peter Thomas, Canadian, who founded Century 21 Real Estate for Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And he's 80 this year as well. And,
wow.
So, and then obviously we have Dan Pena, everybody's familiar with A Dose of Dan, as it's called.
Quite a character, yes.
And then Errol, who was at my 2016 business school, and also was on stage with me as well at a business school I did in Singapore, I think 2013. Mm-hmm. And Errol's actually doing his own workshop in London this October. Which I'm hoping to make an appearance at as well. We're going to support him. It's like $30 a ticket. I mean, he's the guy earns $1 million a day. Yeah, he's not looking for the money. He wants to give back. He's at the time of his life now. He wants to contribute and help as many entrepreneurs as possible. So, I've learned a lot from all of those. But I think the most important aspect is your psychology. Everything else follows. You can learn business strategies from people like Dan. Yeah. But if you don't have the right mindset, as Dan will teach you, then it's a waste of time. But George, in terms of understanding psychology, human emotions, has been a big impact. I think the biggest impact. And then of course, you have Tony Robbins. Tony. I've followed Tony as a trainer for many, many years and learned a huge amount. And Tony, it's great to see him. He's so in his prime right now, so mature and so gifted and eloquent, more so than I've ever seen him at the minute, and just doing really, really well. And again, Tony was nearly bankrupt only a few years ago. Yeah. And this year, I think his businesses are going to do about 11 billion in sales. So it never ends. There's always a lesson. There's always another level. It doesn't matter. There's no arriving. Yeah. Even when you leave Earth School with your last breath on this particular class, you're coming back. Yeah. To reset the exams that you didn't pass this time. It's part of the game. It's part of the journey. And if you do graduate at some level of enlightenment where duality dissipates, then you probably get to go to college where we have a slightly different rule set around physical matter reality. And that's if you and I were in college right now, let's call it that, where we didn't have this tight rule set of the physics that govern space-time, then if we don't have the level of emotional maturity to handle that, we'd be teleporting into bank vaults to, or the ladies' locker room, or, whatever it may be. So, in order to graduate out of this pretty tight physical world rule set where, physics, chemistry, biology kind of rule the matter that we interact with, that our consciousness, experiences through this avatar of body, then, we need to enlighten ourselves. And once we get to that point, they'll probably trust us with a less restrictive classroom. Why don't you leave a loaded 9mm in a playground? Because kids are going to pick it up and in the right way. Whereas would you put a loaded gun on the table in a special forces ops room? Of course you would. Because the guys aren't going to pick it up and say, hey, let's play Cowboys and Indians. Yeah,
totally different. I love that. You've got a great way with your analogies and your metaphors, sir. So you do. Fantastic. Right, who do we have next? Philip, Philip from Wrexham. This whole story of challenges and tests is incredible. That's obviously something you were just discussing there in the classroom. If Peter was to review his life as a whole, what would he say have been his greatest challenges in a physical sense, a mental sense, an emotional sense, and a spiritual sense? Ooh, yeah. So this classroom you've been in, sir, what have been the big toughies? Because that first one, physical, the amount of stuff you've done and pushed yourself on is incredible. So between all of these wee categories, what's the ones that pop up into your head?
Well, from the physical side, I would definitely say the Marathon des Sables.
Right.
Yeah. That was both a physical and a mental challenge. But I would say from an emotional side, probably the loss of my parents was probably
right.
a big challenge in the graduation event. Spiritually, I think transitioning out of my ego, or to the extent that I have, so is I'm a different place to when I was in my sort of mid-20s and controlling asshole, to make it all about me.
Yeah.
And so, from a spiritual side, really, it was about shifting that, letting go of the need for significance, and replacing it with the game of raising the significance of others.
Right.
And that's a beautiful transition once it's made, but the ego doesn't like to let go. And even today, there's always residue there. You have a smoker that's quit smoking. I've never smoked, but I've known a lot of smokers that have quit, and I've helped a lot of smokers quit. But some of them will say 20 years later that they smell the cigarette. Oh, I still fancy a cigarette, even though it's out of their system, etc., because of that level of connection. Vegetarians still miss a bacon sandwich sometimes. It's part of the game. So the ego is never something that you completely transcend unless you have reached a level of, let's say, 600 on the map of consciousness, where it's gone and it's just silent. So it's work in progress. I'd say that the toughest thing was really trying to have that egocentric kid in his 20s that was desperate to prove to the world he was good enough, and still let go of that and realize that, A, nobody gives a crap. But B, really come from a place of authentically wanting to contribute because it's the right thing to do and a natural expression of your soul, rather than to try to score points or win favors, or even the spiritual ego of wanting to get higher on the map of consciousness.
Right. Okay, and that's been your biggest one there. Excellent. Okay, the listeners who are listening in just now and thinking, "What, he's mentioned this a couple of times, a level and a number, and what does he mean?" Well, hang on. We're going to be getting you, because I've got the perfect question for that coming up, and here it is next. Christopher. So we're back over to Scotland, Bridge of Weir. I know where that is, just up north. Good man, Christopher. So, loved the first interview you did with Peter, and I went out and I bought the Power versus Force book that you mentioned during it. However, I've honestly struggled with it. It feels very difficult as a concept to fully understand. It feels a very challenging book with some heavy content. Peter then mentioned in his latest book, The Inside Track, which I also immediately bought, good man Christopher, that some people might be at a certain level that won't fully get that book by Dr. Hawkins. Can you ask him, is there something else that I should study before this? Is there another book or a module or training that I should do first of all, so that I can get to that level to be able to get to what Dr. Hawkins is trying to teach me? So all of this stuff, people, levels of consciousness, or they're resonating at 175. I need to get to so-and-so. So Christopher's trying his best. He's listened in, Power versus Force, fantastic book. You spoke about when you were on the interview you did with Oprah Winfrey. People can find that on YouTube. He's trying that, but he's struggling with it. Can you help him? Is there something he should do beforehand?
The first thing I'll do is relate to him, because the first time I picked up Power versus Force, I read, 30, 40 pages, and I put it down thinking, what's this crap? I can't. Why was this recommended to me? Because I just wasn't ready.
Right.
Yeah. There's an individuation of journey that relates to it in a way. And again, that shouldn't be taken in a way where people feel that, because I'm not good enough. Well, I'm sure we'll get onto that topic as well. I mean, if you are a 10-year-old, does that mean you're better than a 5-year-old? No, you're just further along in your level of understanding of life and expression of your potential. That's just acorn or oak tree. It's the same deal. So there's not any good, bad, right or wrong. You're just on your own particular journey. And for me, it was, it must have been 9 years later when I picked it up, and it changed. Just changed my life. I was ready for it. Now, in a way, what he's asking is, what was my journey through that 9 years?
Yeah.
I would say that one of Hawkins's greatest gifts to the world was his final book, which was called Letting Go. Right. Now, one of the things I love about Hawkins is his articulation of psychological and spiritual concepts is just so profound. It is so eloquent. It's so succinct that it just blows me away. And I say for 9 years, I wasn't ready for that level of understanding. But his last book is written in a very different style. And if you go through the trilogy that started with Power versus Force, the second book is The Eye of the Eye, which is just unbelievable. I gave that to somebody in prison. I had 2 copies sent in. I gave one to somebody in prison it was to Oliver. It helped him get off heroin.
Yes.
He was just ready for it, when he was ready for it. But that book helped him tremendously because he was searching. The book after that is called I. reality and subjectivity. And that is just probably the most off the charts. But if I handed that to certain people that I know, they wouldn't get it.
Right.
And I wouldn't have got it, when I was reading Power versus What. It's a progression. However, Letting Go was written in a very, very different style. In fact, when I was reading it, I'm like, is this Hawkins? And it is, because you can tell. But his language recognized what is currently being said. That some people aren't ready for that level of profundity or the verbosity sometimes of how it's actually articulated. Mm-hmm. But Letting Go is written in a classic, easy read, layman type style with a lot of the same level of insight on how to surrender levels of ego, how to surrender levels of resistance, how to understand higher levels of awareness and consciousness. Mm-hmm. So I would say, look at the map of consciousness, because that's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah. Right now, I'm here in Tenerife, and I've been flown in by the Hollywood Mirage Resort, where I come every several months, and they give me 2 beautiful weeks accommodation in a 5-star resort in return for me giving them an hour of my time in the sales room, which I'm going to do that tomorrow. And one of the things I'm going to be doing tomorrow is handing out a printout of the map of consciousness. Oh. And even a lot of the ego-driven alpha male, top of the sales board kind of people, I know are going to get it, because the way I'm going to explain it is going to be fairly simple. Right. So familiar with the map, don't worry too much about all of the in-depth levels of delineation and articulation around it and the insights there, because that'll come when it's ready. Yeah. But go read Letting Go, and it'll have a very different feel, a very different energy, a lot more sort of layman term with the same kind of message. That'd be my recommendation.
Excellent stuff. That's great, Letting Go. And listeners, we will put that in the show notes to you. You'll obviously have links to the Inside Track book as well, but we'll pop in Letting Go, so if you're interested, you can pick that one up. Right, the last listener's question is Matt from Kirkcaldy. Love Peter's work, loved your first interview with him, and loved his new book. In particular, it was the subject of the Indigo Children that really captured me. I know from following your podcast, Richard, that there will be more than a few Indigo Children that are fellow listeners. Can you please ask Peter to describe and explain this idea when you have him on air, as I'm sure it will make a lot of ears prick up. Indigo Children. There we go, a mysterious label. What on earth is Peter talking about?
Yes, it's down on my eyeshadow. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, case closed. That says, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, chapter 6. Yes, indigo meets black and white, and where really the whole topic is something that, and I'm going to just chunk back a little bit now and say that, remember, that the mind likes to categorize, and the category of Indigo Children is really a label that the mind is imposing on a set of characteristics that essentially separates certain people's behavior, psychology, and interactions with other groups. And so it's one way of labeling. You can label different types of trees. You can label different breeds of dog, what have you. They're all they're still dogs. We can label us a million different ways. From Caucasian to Asian. But the indigo label is really more about characteristics, and it had its genesis in a very respected clairvoyant in the 1970s that was doing a dissertation that was essentially looking at the colors of the bioenergy fields of people known as the aura. And if there was any behavior characteristics or correlations. And she noticed that there was babies that she was looking at that suddenly had an aura color she hadn't seen before. And it was becoming more common. And the color was indigo, and hence the term Indigo Children. And what was more profound was the fact that the babies with the indigo aura, or had indigo in their in the colors of their aura, behaved very differently than those that didn't. And it was a marked sort of demarcation around the behavior characteristics. And those characteristics were typified by a stronger sense of independence, a way where you couldn't control them. I'm a dog lover, as most people that know me know. And I'll give you a classic for dog lovers listening, a Rhodesian Ridgeback versus a Labrador. A Labrador is submissive by nature. It'll do as it's told. You throw the ball, it'll fetch it. Yeah. A Rhodesian Ridgeback is a majestic dog. I've owned Ridgebacks, and they have a different sense. You have to work them as a partnership. Yeah. You open the door and it's rang. They don't want to go out. They ain't going out. You throw the ball, it'll bring it back. You throw it again, it'll look at you. Say, well, I've just brought the damn thing back. Yeah. It's a sense of independence that a submissive type dog doesn't have. Now, when you come to people and Indigo children, most children are a little more submissive to the parental influence, and they'll do as they're told or get told off. Indigos have a very different energetic response. If it doesn't make sense, they will question it. If they don't like the answer to the question, then there'll be a massive amount of reluctance if they're forced to, or they just simply won't. And their primary question is why? There's an insatiable thirst. Now, Indigo children, if you follow the sort of spiritual genre, came in the sort of from the early 70s through to the 80s in quite a large number. And they were really, my theory around that is that they were sent in as a counterbalance to the level of conformity that was essentially destroying our planet and our destiny. The 1970s, it was so much egocentrism, there was so much greed, all about me. Moving into the 80s, the Gordon Gekko kind of, sort of like. Yeah. So what does evolution do? It counterbalances. That's what it always does. Master Circle members on one of the first lessons on the Quantum Alignment Foundation course, I teach about the universal law of balance and how it affects things metaphysically. I teach a little bit of that in the Sage Business School, if you remember, about how the role of importance, creates its own obstacles en route to the goal that you're desiring with the amount of importance you desire. Mm-hmm. So, the Indigo children were brought here essentially to counterbalance the rules and the conformity, because they just don't conform. Now, I'm a classic first-generation Indigo. I was born in 1972. I've always questioned authority. I have a deep resistance and aversion to institutional authority. Call it bureaucracy. Call it status quo. Call it mind-numbing fudge from the idiots that haven't woken up. And that's my ego talking through the Indigo language. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. We just see the world differently. And it's not right. It's not wrong. And if you're a caregiver of an Indigo, if you don't understand the characteristics, then you will usually think that they are just strange, off the wall, nonconformist, rebellious. Again, the most common character is we don't follow rules.
Feel as if we don't fit in, this kind of thing.
We have our own rules. Yeah. Right? It makes absolute total sense to us. That's why most of them are more either agnostic or spiritual, because they see spiritual truth, but the religion that's put around that has usually been created by man with a different level of agenda. Because religion, to quote Hawkins, religion is the institutional consequence of spiritual truth. Mm-hmm. Powerful, profound quote. And so if you understand that if I'm the child of God, why would I need a middleman like a priest to talk to him? Right? It doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense to an Indigo, then sorry, we're not doing it. Right? So, and it expresses itself in many classic levels of life expression, whether for me it's through entrepreneurship, right? Because there's that creativity, break the rules, not conform. I was never going to get a job and work for somebody. It's just not in my DNA. I'm unemployable. Yeah. So, or it could express itself through, you sort of social entrepreneurs, which you're seeing a lot of now, because it's against it stands for a moral cause that's against the subversion of the traditional impositions of government. Cryptocurrency. Let's go to good old Satoshi. Nakamoto. I guarantee you there's an Indigo in there.
100%.
Or whoever he or they are to be. Then you've got your artists, your inventors, your creators, your Edisons, your Teslas, your Da Vinci's. All of those have that element throughout history. In fact, most of the people that have shaped the world that you and I live in, and are grateful to do so, have shaped it from that level of Indigo nature, shall we say. Mm-hmm. So again, whether they had Indigo in their aura, or whether that visual representation to Antoba, who's wrote one of the first books on Indigo, is real, or whether it isn't, it doesn't matter. It's a characteristic labeling that the mind has imposed that really segregates this level of behavior and nonconformity. So that's really the best I can share on that. And if you have always thought you were different, if you've always thought that you didn't fit in, if you always wonder why people just don't get you, and to you certain things seem obvious, and to others they just like, and chances are you're an indigo. And when you realize that, there's a real sense of, wow, I found my tribe.
Yeah.
You're usually okay with your own company. Because it's far better than dealing with people that just don't see the world at the level that you feel that you see it at. And say not right or wrong, you just have a different, different radio frequency.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I was alluding to there, because the antithesis of that is bureaucracy. And if you want to see the antithesis, the typification of bureaucracy, go to prison. It's falling down, or look at government or politics. And I deep dive on that, as you know, in the Inside Track, and I'm certainly not going to get into it now, otherwise it'll be a 20-hour podcast.
Of course. And even in those systems, you came across some other fellow indigos, even one of the prison officers, it's all explained. So it's tremendous stuff. So good shout, Matt, for bringing that up. Right, listeners, I'm about to be cheeky. I've had this man on the call for a long time. He's given up his valuable time. Went through the kind of 10 hotshot listeners' questions that we found. And I'm going to ask, if he's got time, could you face one more question, Peter? Is that possible? Do you have time for one more?
Absolutely not. But as it's you.
Excellent. What a guy. Okay, here's the thing, listeners. What you don't know, when the team and I sat down and we managed to put, that's a cracker, that's in the top 10, that's a cracker. The problem we had was there was at least 45 to 50 questions that were all chipping away at the same thing, but they were all worded differently. And I ended up leaving them to the side. So if you forgive me, listeners, I'm going to try and paraphrase what all these different listeners were trying to chip away at, because throughout the book, Peter, you would talk about the primal fear we all have. So you would go into someone with a drug addiction and explain their background. And of course, it comes back to that feeling of not being good enough. You would go into some relationship breakdowns and issues with kids and fathers in prison. And it comes back to this primal fear of not feeling good enough. And it's mentioned throughout the entire thing. So everybody wanted to know about this. And I thought, right, the best way I can think of it to kind of try and get you to help is 3 things. Number 1, how would you explain what you mean by that? Well, what do you mean by this primal fear of not feeling good enough, for example? Number 2, why do you think we have it? And there's a quite existentialist one for you and your own spiritual beliefs. And number 3, let's get back to practical. How is the best way of trying to push against that, get over that, get above that, try and find that self-esteem that would remove that fear or counterbalance that fear? Can you chip into those? Does those 3 threads help you try and kind of verbalise what all these different listeners are trying to understand from you?
You just want the secrets of life, basically.
That's that kind of thing. If you could. So it's 60 seconds and go.
Oh, dear. Have any of my answers been 60 seconds? Yes, I need to work on that. Right. Okay, let's start with identifying what is the primary. The primary fear is the fear that we're not enough. Now, usually good enough, but it can translate itself into several different aspects or several different ways. Not feeling good enough, good looking enough, tall enough, short enough, old enough, young enough, whatever it is. It's a feeling of lack, inadequacy. Mm-hmm. That something is missing, that I am not whole. And part of that is inherently natural, because if we were born feeling completely whole as part of our entire journey, there's not really reason to be here unless you want to be an example and a teacher. And there's some people like that, but Buddha wasn't born in Latin. Yeah. He had his own journey of growth to go through, from Prince Siddhartha, through into the monk before he became the Buddha. So it's part of the inherent journey. Again, I use it as an analogy, Earth School, which is going to be the title of my next book. And we're here in Earth School. Why? Because we're here to learn how to grow. What is that growth? It's essentially raising our consciousness. What's the ultimate expression of that? Is love. And that's not some woo-woo stuff. That's based on scientific evidence, on fossil records. When you analyze 400 million years of human evolution, you'll see, life evolution, you'll see that the destination or the primary direction of evolution is to evolve complexity by lowering entropy. Right? What I mean by that, it means that you are lowering disorder in the expressions of life that is evolving. So an amoeba at 1 cell and a human being at 50 to 100 trillion cells. Now, the difference is you have far more complexity in a human being, which requires far more cooperation. You have 50 trillion amoebas in the same pool. They're fighting each other for, what protoplasm they can eat, right? Whereas a human body has to work together. So what's the ultimate expression of cooperation, and extrapolation of that is love. And so essentially, we're here to learn how to love. So we're born whole to an extent in terms of we have everything that we require. The kitchen is there with the ingredients, the pots, the pans, the gas, the electric. And then it's our journey of own self-discovery and growth along that process in order to become the best chef that we can be. Now, throughout that journey, that feeling of fear of not being enough can be a very good driver or motivator if it's used well by understanding it's part of this journey. It can also be a crippler if we think, well, there's no point, I don't think I can get there. So therefore, I'm just going to stay on to victim mode. Right? So, but the primary fear, if we recognize it, we can then disassociate from it because we recognize what it is. It's not me. The I of who I am is good enough. There's no essence to that. The association I have to the identity of me in this body known as Pete, I have some issues around that because my ego and my fears have not yet been transcended. Again, if they were, you wouldn't need to be in Earth School and expect life to send a bus you didn't see coming anymore so you can check out. Right? It's part of the game. So we're here to transcend, raise love and lower fear. So therefore, the primary fear in different levels of categories is just inherent as part of the nature of the journey through school. Right? So, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
It kind of answers its own question. We're here to raise our level of consciousness. Now, that's why the map, and I refer to it so often, is good because it does offer a map. It offers a grid reference as to where we are and where we can go. And Hawkins wrote a beautiful book called Transcending the Levels of Consciousness on how to get from one level to another. Now, what do you have to let go of? What do you have to replace it with? And I chunk it into my simple 4 levels, which is, the sort of to me, by me, through me, as me. Which was on, I outlined, I think that it kind of went more viral on my first London Reel interview, which I think you recall. Incidentally, if you go to petersage.com/London Reel, you can watch those interviews because I put them up myself. But if you are looking to lower your fear, it's an individual journey. Oh, I'm not good enough. Well, you are. One of the primary awarenesses that I teach there, and one of the methods I teach, if you recall, which is the curse of the white rabbit.
Yes.
Is to understand you already are that which you seek. Now, when you own that at an emotional awareness, not just an intellectual awareness, things start shifting. When you realize that, you're here to grow up, not here to see who's got going to be the richest man in the graveyard, you can start to let go of some of that. You realize that life is about what can I contribute through growing more of myself to be able to do so, rather than what can I take from others at their expense so I can feel as if I've got more certainty or significance. You're on the right track. So yes, it's identifying somebody's primary fear, because that's what's driving us. That's the real strings on the puppet. So doing that, understanding we're here to grow up, not taking it too seriously in terms of life or death, because you as consciousness is immortal. When you get that, you can lighten up. What's the game become? If I had to check out right now, I check out. I was saying to one of my good friends, here in the room with me, Sasha, I say, I see myself, and again, metaphors. I love George Lucas, as a Jedi. I'm here as a sentinel. It's part of my mission. I'm a sentinel of light. My here is to help raise consciousness. And if the bigger game decided that I was needed in a different reality frame, either on another planet in similar physical circumstances or in a metaphysical sense on another spiritual realm or whatever it may be, and it felt that me as the expression of consciousness known as Peter could add more value there than here, then I expect a bus to come along anytime soon. And I'd be okay with that, because I'm playing a bigger game, called I'm an actor, not I'm in this movie. You know? And when you come at life from that perspective, you don't have to take it so serious. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that, because in the movie of our life, a lot of the times we get caught up in the character and the narrative rather than remembering we're an actor in the movie industry. Make sense?
It does indeed. Tremendous. And the perfect way to end our chat today. You see, the Scotsman was right to be cheeky and ask for more time.
I think that's called being inherent.
Oh, how dare you. My ego just took that on board. But you managed to help so many people there. I absolutely know that for sure. You've hopefully taken a burden off them, or at least get them to start thinking about it. Try and get rid of that. Yes, more love, less fear. Let's do that. Peter, for your time today, for everything as ever, can't thank you enough. I want you to enjoy yourself in Bali. Continue to enjoy all the success of the inside track that listeners can pick up from the show notes. And just thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
No, pleasure's mine. And as I've said, my mission is here to help and serve and help raise consciousness. And I wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for people like you being able to provide a platform for me to be able to reach people that I may not otherwise reach. So thank you, Richard, for what you're doing.
Hi folks, it's Richard here again. I really hope that you enjoyed today's show. Now listen, I've got 2 links to help support you on your property journey, and I want you to write these down when it's safe to do so. You might be driving in your car just now listening to the podcast, and that's fine, but please make sure that you get back to this and write down these links. Okay, are you ready? Got your pen in hand? So the first one, thisweekinproperty.com. Now that's the website for this podcast. On there, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss out. What you can also do on there is catch up on tons and tons of past episodes. There are hours and hours of property related content and some amazing guests with some fantastic insights to help you on your property journey. So that is thisweekinproperty.com. Okay, next link, propertyprotege.com. Now let me spell that one out for you. PROPERTY PROTEGE. That's propertyprotege.com. Now what's it all about? Well, the Property Protege Intensive is designed to give you the lift that you need into the world of property. And if you've already started, if you've already got some experience, then this can help you accelerate your progress even further. The experiences that people have had at Protege and the success that they've achieved afterwards has been life-changing for many people. So go there right now if you're serious about property and if you want to build a highly successful property business. That's propertyprotege.com. So there you go. That's 2 links to some fantastic resources that are going to help you. And listen, talking about help, can you help me to help other people? You see, the more that we can share this podcast, then more people can learn from the fantastic guests that I've been so lucky to talk to. How can you help? Well, it's very simple and very quick. Just a short review on iTunes is going to help make that happen. If you go to thisweekinproperty.com/iTunes, that will guide you to the very place that you will be able to help other people. So thank you. Thanks for doing that, and thanks for listening into the show. And I look forward to bringing another great guest to you in the next show.